Yo, what's good, everybody? I'm Justin Miller, owner of Legends of Athletics. I have 9 years of sports performance industry experience under the belt. I've been in this game since 2014, and a lot of things have changed. But I want to be a resource for you guys that have allowed me to be a resource to you. So sorry, I'm a little under the weather, but anyway, man, the show must go on. So one question that I often get asked is like, how do I come back from injury within my sport? Whether that's on the court, the field, what have you, the diamond, whatever surface that you play on. How do I come back within my sport to be effective and to be prepared and ready? Things like that. Me personally, man. So before I got into sports, like before I dove like completely head first into sports performance, I worked in healthcare. And so my degree is in kinesiology, Bachelor of Science, Mississippi State University. But I worked in a lot of healthcare settings. So I worked in inpatient rehab, also did some stuff in outpatient, ortho, things like that, bouncing around. And so, firstly, the first thing I would do is coordinate with your doctor or your therapist and your athletic trainer to see what you can tolerate, what you cannot tolerate, and what your timeline is, what your wiggle room is, and then intensities. Doctors are often tell you intensities to train, intensities that you can go without making the injury worse, and keeping yourself conditioned. Some injuries you just purely cannot put any weight on. Let's say you have a high ankle sprain, you can't put any weight through it. Well, you got to find a way to be effective while out for that 2 to 3 week period. And that may look like doing conditioning in a swimming pool. That may look like sand work, things that take the weight off of that ankle and the direct pressure off that ankle, but it still gives you the opportunity to be effective and train effectively to combat that. Now, your training and your timeline, whether you're in preseason, mid-season, or end of the season, is going or all season even is going to be completely different on how you want to address your injury. If we're in preseason, and let's say you're a football player, we're in preseason, and or even basketball, you're in preseason, and you know that you're going to miss that preseason camp, then you want to take that time to put yourself kind of through your own camp. You do not want to come back to your team completely deconditioned. Conditioning is one of the things that you always, if you have the opportunity to do it, do it. Do some conditioning. And you always want to try to do strength work as well. Now, this is what I would say with strength work in regards to lower body injuries. With lower body injuries, because those are your wheels, you don't want to do so much strength work that you end up causing the imbalance that's already going to be there to go over the edge, because then you're going to injure yourself again. There's so many people that come back from ACL injuries. Um, well, we're going to just say knee injury. We're not going to put a specific on it, but we're going to say knee injuries, ankle injuries, hips, things like that. They come back from those injuries, and guess what they do? They injure the other side due to overcompensation, muscle imbalances, things like that. And so you want to put yourself in the best position to not have that happen to you. So let's say you have a quadriceps injury. So that's the front of your thigh. You have a quadriceps injury that you're able to work through. Um, well, let's say not quadriceps. Let's say you have one of your calf muscles are injured. That'd be a good example. And you're not able to put any weight through your calf. Well, you can still do leg extensions. If the doctor gives you that clearance, you can still do leg extensions and have both of your quad muscles kind of be within balance. And but I wouldn't suggest doing a lot of calf exercises, because one, you already gonna be walking on one and using that as compensation, and two, I don't really feel like that would be advantageous. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense to you. Now, if you got an upper body injury, of course you're gonna have some asymmetry going on, meaning like one side may be a little bigger than the other. Just if you're working out and you naturally, whatever you injure naturally is going to atrophy a little bit. So that just means those muscles will waste away a little bit. So whatever you have, you're going to be a little bigger or a little stronger on one side than you are the other. But with the upper body, you can usually work yourself back to some balance over time, so it's not as bad. But those aren't really your wheels, so it's not going to affect you as much as with your lower half or your legs. And so I think, like I said, step one would be coordinating with your doctor, your therapist, and your athletic trainer. If you have a sports performance coach, he can also be injected into that process to help you with the ramping up period. That's something that I like to do personally with my athletes. It's just ramping up. Ramping up simply means that we'll start at like 50 to 70%, which will be our baseline, and then as we go along and we go along and we go along, we'll continue to gradually increase that intensity to get the most from you as an athlete and get you back to baseline, which was pre-injury or beyond by the time you go back and join your team. I think one of the worst pieces of advice that anybody can give you, like when you're injured, is to not do anything at all. Like if you got a lower body injury, you can still be working on your upper half. If you got an upper body injury, you can still be working on your lower half. Unless it's something with your shoulder or something like that, you even with that, you still can work around it and keep yourself going. If you know that you play basketball, for instance, right? You play basketball and you got a lot of conditioning and cardio that you have to do. Well, what sense would it make if you're coming back mid season to do nothing at all? And then let's say you're in high school, that season ain't long anyway. So when you come back, it's gonna take you 2, 3 weeks to get back in shape. All right, let's say we're in the playoffs by that time or first round, and you still ain't 100%. You're gonna be beating yourself up and be down on yourself because you're gonna be like, man, I came back and I wasn't this and that the third. Like, no, you're not gonna come back at 100% conditioning, but you should come back relatively not far from where you left at. Now, if it's mid season, you really it's really the kind of same thing. But that's going to depend on how long you have been out for. I'm saying in context of 2 to 3 weeks, it shouldn't be that big of a drop off. Now, if it's 6 months, a year, something like that, then yeah, it's gonna be a big drop off. It's gonna take some time, because rehab you can only get so much from rehab. You can only get so much from ramping up. So you always want to be in tune with that. Me personally, I say like for me with my athletes, I like to work with the PT or physical therapist that is working with the athlete, because that's like a place that I'm fairly comfortable in. I worked in rehab a long time before I got into doing this full time, and then I worked, I've always worked in clinical settings, and so a lot of the lingo and jargon and things like that, I can kind of go through and translate, dissect, and things like that to get the best piece for my athlete. And so, me personally, like that would be my thought process. Of course, if you get into the middle to end of the season, it's about getting comfortable where you are, knowing your limitations, and then pushing through to the end point of the season if you can. But you got to understand too that you're going to be injured 9 times out of 10. If you got injured mid-season, when y'all get to the end, you're probably still going to be injured and not feeling even 80%. You might be at like 60, and then you got to know that if you go to the playoffs, it's about what you can tolerate as an athlete, and so you have to keep that in your mind too. What can I tolerate? What can I take on as we go through the sport? Things like that. Um, Ultimately, I say like if you got a trainer, man, if he or she is worth her salt, she will be able to assist you with getting back on the field and addressing along with your PT. Your PT number one, trainer number two is going to be able to assess and address um, those injuries and what you should be doing in order to help you get back on the field, court, diamond of play, whatever surface that is, and go from there. So I hope that this video helped you guys. I hope that I wasn't just giving you problems, but also giving you a solution or a train of thought. As far as like those of you that may be coming back from injury or may be injured right now, always talk to your therapist about what your timeline is. As an athlete, your therapy is probably going to be more aggressive than a geriatric patient. A geriatric patient just means somebody who is elderly, like your grandparents or something like that. Your therapist is going to be more aggressive because you're playing an active sport and you're coming back to be active, not just to carry out your daily functions as far as like walking and putting a shirt on and things like that. So your therapy is going to look different. Also, you want to ask a question of like, why are we doing this? What is this addressing? And so, you want to know like, how do I address, if you're getting towards the end of your therapy, how do I address these muscle imbalances? Or if you're working with a trainer, well, how do we address these emotional imbalances so I can be the best me? Because you don't want to come back, like I said earlier in the video, you don't want to come back and because you've been limping or whatever so long that you put all that weight on the good leg and then you end up getting another injury and it snowballs and goes downhill from there. Sports is very finite. It's not a long, extensive thing. And so you want to make the most of that time and make the most of your time, your career while you're in it as you can. So those are a couple things, like I said, that I would just address and keep in mind whenever I'm going through my sport, I'm going through my play, things like that, in order to be the best me that I can be and present the best product on the field. And know that when you get back to the field, know when you get back to the court or whatever surface that is that you play on, know whenever you get back to that, whatever film that you put out, nobody cares about your injuries. So that's your responsibility. So keep those things in mind and don't rush it. If you have time, do not rush it. I know some of y'all are gonna be seniors and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I need that scholarship. Oh my God, this is my last time, this, that, whatever. But you have to, again, this is like it's a personal choice. Is it worth it to you to risk it right then and potentially get that scholarship or whatever? Or is it more worth it to you to look at your lifelong and say, well, I gave my best shot. It just went in the cards for me and to move on. That's something that you have to answer for yourself. Because again, like I just said, it's about the film that you put out there. That's your responsibility. That's your duty, and nobody cares about, oh, you were injured here. They just care about what they see on tape. And so I hope that this video helped. Again, if you made it to this point in the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Talk to me next time. Until next time, be legendary.